So welcome everybody. I'm Captain Sarah. I am with Chesapeake Boating Academy and Toba US Kent Narrows and Naps Narrows. I am on the Chesapeake Bay on the eastern shore of Maryland, and I have an on the water training school, and we also operate a 24/7 marine towing and salvage Toba US a couple of Toba US ports up here. So excited to be discussing Rule 30 with everybody today. I think the best thing will be for me to share my screen with you so that we can all kind of dive into this together. So here we go. All right. Come up here. I'm going to go to present. All right. Are we all able to see this?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So navigation rule 30, anchored vessels and vessels aground. We're going to get into learning about the different lights and signals required, whether it be daytime or nighttime signals required for vessels of different sizes and lengths to display if they're either anchored or if they are aground. So the rule, first we're going to talk about the anchored vessels. And then the second half of this presentation, we'll be talking about vessels aground. International and inland are the same, okay? So what I did was I put the international rule for Rule 30 right here, the inland one, the exact same one, okay? There's no difference. And we're going to talk about it in a kind of an easier, more condensed format. The goal of these rules that is set forth in by the Coast Guard in the nav book is really to ultimately to prevent collision, right? So they want to make sure that people understand if a vessel is anchored that they are not going to be able to give way if there's a boat that's underway heading towards them. Same thing if they're aground. So in Rule 30, anchored vessels, vessels aground, anchored vessels must display proper anchor lights and shapes where best seen. What does that mean? That means that they need to be hung high enough and visible, hopefully from a 360, so that boats from any angle could see that those lights or those shapes are being displayed. Required signals. So in the forward front of the boat towards the bow, one all around white light, nighttime or reduced visibility, or the daytime shape is one black ball. The stern, one all around white light placed lower than the forward light. So we have a white light that's higher on the bow, a white light that's a little bit lower on the stern, depending on the size of the vessel. Vessels under 50 meters may display a single all around white light instead of the two white lights. Okay, so that's really the distinction that they're making here. 50 meters and greater, they're going to need to have those two lights. Below it, one light will suffice. If you're a vessel that is 100 meters or longer, they must also illuminate their decks using work lights, floodlights, or equivalent lighting. So they want to make sure that they have both the white high on the bow, another white lower on the stern. In addition to that, if you're greater than 100 meters, we need to make sure we have our deck slit, right? Because these boats are often container ships, much larger boats that might be moving up and down the coast. When they do go to anchorages, they're big, they're long, they're a couple, 100 feet, 500, 600 feet long. There's a big stretch in between them. So they want to make sure that the middle of the boat is lit up. They're doing that with illuminating the deck with different lights. Okay. Smaller anchored vessels, you can also illuminate your decks, but it is not a requirement. Let's look and see what this might look like on the water, okay? And just so that we're all on the same page here, 1 meter equals 3.2 feet. I tend to talk about boats in feet length. So it's 3.2 and change, but for purposes, 1 meter equals 3.2, okay? Right here, we've got a picture. This is a vessel. Hold on a minute. A vessel at anchor, less than 50 meters in length. So this is going to be for both international and inland. So we can see here at nighttime, they have this all around 360 white light closer to the bow. Their daytime signal is a black ball. Okay. On sailboats, they're usually hanging that high up in the mast from the shrouds or the different halyards that they have on the boat. But they're running it so that it can be seen from all around. On the left, a little picture here. This is the NAV Rules and Regulations Handbook. I actually just picked up another one of these on Amazon a couple weeks ago. They're only like 12 bucks. And they're great to have aboard. Have to have them for commercial and vessels over 39.4 feet. But good for all recreational boaters so that you can really kind of understand the hierarchy on the water, and the correct rules and light signals and daytime signals to be using so that everybody knows how to be safe. Okay. Going on to the next slide here. And please, if you guys have any questions, feel free to stop me. Okay, so this here is a vessel at anchor with the deck illumination. So you can see, right? Maybe this is moving some sort of petroleum or gas. It's got a higher white bow light. It's got a lower white light off of the back of the boat by the stern. And then it's got deck illumination. So they've got floodlights and they're lighting it up. And the reason is these boats are big, they're long, they're hard to see, right? So we don't want people driving into the middle of them, thinking that it's two separately anchored boats. And that's why we illuminate the decks. This is for inland and also same for international. Here is what it would look like. So this is for the smaller boats. This would be day sign, the top picture here. We've got this black sphere, okay? It has to be hung nice and high and visible, okay? Okay. If we're looking at a boat from its side, if we see a white all around light, okay, going to be hung nice and high. That will be a view from the port side. If it had the white light in the back, okay, if we were looking at the starboard side instead of a port side view, what it would look like is we would have the smaller, lower stern light on the left side of the screen, and the taller one on the closer to the front of the boat. Okay, so this is how at nighttime people are able to see what side of the boat they're looking at. It really depends on the height of where those lights are. The higher light is always towards the bow. The lower white light is always towards the stern. Okay, here's another picture looking at if we're looking at a boat from ahead or from the back of it, from a stern. Okay, I do want to say that just like our running lights that we're using on our boats, those should be on from sunset to sunrise. I usually like to put mine on 30 minutes before sunset until 30 minutes after sunrise, and also times of reduced visibility. Super fog, right? Pea soup fog, really hard to see, have to have our lights on. Same goes for if we are out, and if we're anchored. If we're anchored during the day and it's really poor visibility or super rainy, could be tons of fog, lots of different reasons. We do want to make sure that we're illuminating the boat with the lights, because the day signal might not be able to be seen in poor visibility conditions. Here's just a couple of pictures, what it might look like. I know a lot of us are more present in the recreational boating world. So, we might not always be surrounded by the commercial large shipping and tug and barge community, like some people are. So if we're looking at smaller boats, this one on the left, it's going to have if you're anchored, an all around white light displayed off the top. Okay. Sailboats, most of the time, will have it all around white light for their anchor light, and that will be at the very top of their mast. Okay. Another place would be sometimes you'll have an all around white light on smaller boats, power driven vessels towards the stern. All right. So, are there any questions for the first half of Rule 30 that we covered around boats that are anchored? Anybody's got questions, happy to answer them, or we can do it at the end as well, because we're about to go into the second part of this rule, which is vessels aground.
No questions yet. Thanks.
Question. Cool. Okay, here we go. All right. We've got international and inland. Okay, so again, these are pretty much the same. Okay, this is Rule 30 continued. A vessel aground shall exhibit the light prescribed in paragraph A or of this rule in addition where they can be best seen. So just like when we had boats that were anchored, if a vessel is aground, that means the boat, the bottom of the boat has hit the seabed. It's kind of either wedged into the sand, the mud, it could be on rocks. The vessel is unable to maneuver on its own power. It's stuck on the bottom. They have to exhibit different lights or day signals so that they can let other boaters know that they're there. Okay. So the international and the inland are the same. And this is what it's going to look like. Okay. They're going to have, here's one vessel aground, less than 50 meters in length on our left side of the screen. Exact same for international. So inland and international lights and day signals are going to be displayed the same. Okay. Here we have on the right, this is a little bit bigger boat. So it's over that 50 meters. It's got a bow and stern white light. Okay. And then it has these two vertical red lights. The day shape is going to be 3 vertical black balls. Here is a picture. We own a Topo US company up here on the Chesapeake. So just to kind of put it in real life context, here's what it looks like a lot of times when boats do go aground. This picture that we're looking at is a sailboat and their keel hit the bottom. Where we are in the Chesapeake, we've got a lot of mud. So the mud, the keel kind of gets stuck in the mud. But you'll see a boat so oftentimes sort of heeled over a little bit, or depending if it's really shallow, kind of leaning onto its side. And I will tell you, it's very rare and very seldomly do we ever see people in these smaller boats displaying either nighttime lights or daytime signals. Most of the time, we're just getting calls on the radio, and we come and we assist them that way. Okay. A vessel, so there's a couple exceptions to this. We're talking still about vessels that are aground, okay? If a vessel is less than 7 meters in length, when at anchor or not in or near a narrow channel, fairway, or anchorage, or where other vessels normally navigate, they're not required to exhibit the lights or shapes prescribed in the previous part of this rule. So also a vessel less than 12 meters in length, if they're aground, shall not be required to exhibit the lights or shapes before that we discussed in this rule. Okay, so there are exceptions, and it really does depend on your location, where you are. Okay. I kind of condensed the two inland and international for this continued section of Rule 30. In a nutshell, vessels under 7 meters, when they're at anchor, they're not required to display anchor lights or shapes if they are not in or near a narrow channel, fairway, or anchorage, or normal navigation area. Personally speaking, as somebody who is a live-aboard cruiser and spends a lot of time on the water anchored, I would still display my all-around white 360 light at night, even if I'm in an area that doesn't need to legally have the light displayed, because you never know if there's going to be other boaters out on the water, and you want to make sure that people can see you. Okay. Again, vessels under 12 meters aground, they are not required to display the red all around lights or the 3 balls that are required for the larger vessels that are aground. We do not often see this. It's more as you get into yachts and commercial traffic that they're going to start displaying these different balls and red lights. There is an inland rule exception. Vessels under 20 meters anchored in a designated special anchorage area are not required to display anchor lights or shapes. Again, I think it's very important that even if you're in an area where it's designated or somewhere that you don't think that there's gonna be other boats, it's still, in my opinion, as a captain, good to do your due diligence just to illuminate your boat so that people can see that you're there. Next slide. Little deviation from, wanted to kind of just add on a little bit. If you do see a boat that is aground or disabled and a towboat comes to assist them, the towboats that are often towing these boats are displaying red and yellow alternating lights. Okay, it's going to be shown on their light bar, so it'll be flashing yellow and then flashing red back and forth. So if you're out on the water and you do see this red yellow light combination, uh, be advised that there's usually a vessel that is either being ungrounded or a vessel that is under tow. So you want to kind of give that boat lots of room and definitely do not try to drive between the towboat and the boat being towed. Speaking from experience, people try to do that often. Oops, let's go back here. I did want to talk about a couple other things not in this rule, but I think that are quite relevant to all of us on the water. One of the first things that we ask people to do, we do a lot of boats that do, they're out and they go aground. One of the first things that we ask people to do if they go aground or if they're just disabled is to anchor their boat. And that's because anchoring their boat is a much safer way if they drift off from being aground or if they're just disabled. We don't want them drifting into shorelines or rocky areas or docks or other boats that are underway. It's usually the first thing we do. Okay, is everybody aboard okay? Do you have on life jackets? Are you able to put an anchor out so you don't drift anywhere else that could be more dangerous? Another thing is radio call signals. So on a VHF radio, there's really three sort of different tiers of calls. The first one would be called a securite. Second one would be a pon-pon. And then the last one we're all probably have heard about before is Mayday. So the Mayday is the most serious. It is like calling 911 on VHF channel 16 on your VHF radio. Mayday would be if the vessel is in peril or if there's a medical emergency in with somebody on the boat. So maybe your boat's on fire. Maybe it's rapidly taking on water. Maybe somebody is having a heart attack. Maybe somebody got bit by a shark. There could be a lot of different reasons why people might call Mayday. It's very, very serious. Everybody's going to start running when they hear this call. Okay. Just above that, less serious, is a pon-pon. You might hear Coast Guard issuing pon-pon, pon-pon, pon-pon. This is basically a notice to mariners. They're letting people know that there's not a big emergency, but there's something to be aware of. And oftentimes it might be a disabled or a ground vessel. So here in the bay, it's pretty shallow. Our average depth is around 21 feet or so. So sometimes if there's a boat aground and they're stuck in the entrance to a channel, Coast Guard will issue a pon-pon to let people know to be aware of that certain area while they're navigating if there is a boat in that area that's aground or unable to move. The least serious of all these three calls is the securite. The securite is more just like a warning, like, hey, we want to let you guys know, we want to give you some information. They'll say securite, securite, securite. This is the United States Coast Guard. Then they're going to name their call port. For us in the Chesapeake, it's usually the U.S. Coast Guard NCR National Capital Region. And they are doing securities for different reasons. Maybe for us, they were doing it often with the Key Bridge being down. They were wanting vessels to avoid that area and to be aware that there was a lot of commercial people working around there. As a towboat operator, we will often do security calls if we are ungrounding boats or if we're towing boats, especially if we're towing through tight, narrow channels. We want to make sure that people are aware and they hear us well in advance. We are much less, we're more restricted in our ability to maneuver when we've got a vessel under tow, especially when there's a lot of wind or current. So you'll also hear these different call signals kind of surrounded by Rule 30 that we're talking about here, which is anchored and aground vessels. Um, are there any questions? I was going to recap this Rule 30 for us, but before I do, anybody's got any questions, happy to answer anything. Can you guys see me again?
Yep, we
Yeah.
see ya.
Okay. All right. So, super important takeaway from this really is going to be if there's a vessel that is anchored, they need to have lights that they are displaying. And it's really dependent upon the size of the vessel, the length of the vessel in meters. It goes from usually 50 and then 100 meters are really where you start to see more lights, the different displays. For these rules, the inland and the international pretty much mirror each other. Okay. If you are going to be anchored at nighttime, you need to have your all around 360 white light. Okay. Day signal is the black ball. It's important that these are displayed where they're visible and can be seen by other boaters that are on the water. If you are aground, same sort of thing. We need to make sure that we're displaying these vertical red lights and the 3 vertical black balls. This is going to indicate to everybody else that sees you, this is a vessel that is aground. That is why it's super important to carry this navigation rules and regs book. Even in my opinion, even if you're not commercial, if you're not a vessel over 39 feet, it allows you to quickly kind of open it up and see what's happening, especially if you live near busy areas or busy ports. We're on the Chesapeake, so we have the Port of Baltimore, and there's a lot of big shipping traffic coming and going. I think I saw Alan Rex on here. So, hey, he's up on the C&D Canal. He sees a lot of big boats, and they're moving, and they are in, there's a lot of current up there too. So, um, if you see these boats, you really need to know what their different lights and signals mean. So does anybody have anything else that they'd like to add? I know personally, I don't see a ton of the smaller boats displaying these. They're not required to if they're, a certain size. But I do spend time in Annapolis, and in Annapolis, I will see some of the larger sailboats, 50, 45, 50 plus foot range. They will display most of the time this black ball up in their rigging, usually closer towards the bow of the boat. And again, if it's reduced visibility, we definitely want to make sure that even during the day, reduced visibility, that we're going and turning that all around 360 white light back on because that black ball day signal might not be visible during poor visibility times. Has anybody, I guess this is a good question, has anybody on this thread here ever seen any of these different lights or day signals displayed while they've been on the water? I usually tend to see them more if I am somewhere like down in Norfolk area, Virginia, Port Everglades, closer to Baltimore. That's where we start to see these boats that fall into that 50-meter, 100-meter range. Off of Annapolis, we have the Annapolis anchorage. It's where all of the ships that are waiting to go into the Port of Baltimore, they're displaying these, right? They want to let people know, hey, I'm not underway, okay? The goal of all of these different rules in this book ultimately is to prevent collisions on the water so that everybody's safer and they understand what they're seeing in front of them or behind them. And so that's why it's so important.
You'll see them out on Delaware River quite often as well.
Yeah, totally. Yep. Yeah, they there's not always space at docks or maybe space in a canal to travel through it. So sometimes these bigger boats just have to anchor and wait until they, kind of get the clearance or until a pilot is able to hop aboard the boat with them. So they'll anchor sometimes up for a couple days, even longer. Um, I imagine, the ship that we've all been hearing about that had all the hantavirus people on board, they didn't necessarily want these people coming into port right away. They're anchored offshore for a little bit.
Mhm.
Yeah. So it's super important. And again, even in my opinion, even if you fall in the exception part of this rule, where you're not legally required to be have these lights, I do really think it's important that you get a light. And even if it's just something that is a temporary light, that's LEDs are nice and bright. We use a lot of those. We like to do the 3 mile lights around us so that people can see them from far away. They tend to go farther and last longer, easier for people to see. So even if you don't need to have them, I think it's smart to do that. Yeah. Okay, so again, Rule 30, we're covering anchored vessels and vessels aground. And really, we're talking about lights at night and day signals during the day. I'm happy to go back and show the slides if anybody would like a refresher or to see the pictures again. Maybe I'll just do one quick screen share here so we can just finally see. Let's see. All right, let's go back to the beginning. Okay. All right, so here's what it's going to look like for smaller vessels, okay, less than 50 meters, if they're anchored. All around 360 white light closer to the bow. Daytime signal, black ball, all right? Vessels that are bigger than that, okay, they're going to get 2 all around 360 white lights. The one towards the bow is going to be higher up. The one towards the stern is going to be lower down. This is going to be the same for international rules and inland rules. All right. They're also required to illuminate their deck. Their daytime signal is this all around black ball. Okay. Here's another picture of what it would look like. Vessel from the side. We're looking at a vessel head on or from towards the vessel stern. Different examples of boats that are a little bit smaller that usually we see in our areas. Okay, so we've got a smaller powerboat all around 360. Sailboat, it's going to be at the top of their mast. Some little powerboats will display them from like a little light post on their stern. And here now we're going to talk about the vessels aground. Okay, so we need to have, if your vessel is aground, it's going to have these 2 vertical red lights displayed along with the all-around white light, because usually if you're aground, you're not moving. Okay, so less than 50 meters, the 2 red lights, the 1 white light, and then your day signal is these 3 black vertical balls. Larger vessels than 50 meters, we're going to have the 2 white lights and then the additional 2 red vertical lights. Same day signal as the smaller boats though. Here's a fun picture of our towboat. This was just the other day. It's been a super windy May up here, windy and chilly. So ready for the winds to calm down. Okay. And then there was obviously some exceptions that we did talk about, vessels less than 7 meters, also vessels less than 12 meters, not always being required to exhibit lights. But I do think it's important that if you're able to add those on your boat and you're going out, to try to do so. Okay. Here we go. We also discussed if you see a towboat, right? Usually they're towing a boat that was aground or that was at anchor and we're pulling them back into port. They're going to have a red and yellow tow bar that they show, okay? Things to keep your ears out for, right? When we're on the water, we're always keeping lookout, both with our eyes and with our ears. And so we're listening for different calls on channel 16 on the radio. Potential security calls, pon-pons, or also mayday calls. This is going to let us know if there's any boats in the area that might be aground, might be anchored, or things to keep an eye for so that we can be safe. And that is a wrap from my side.